Hello, Internet. My name is Sir Lord, and today we're going to talk about the little things. So, what do I mean by the little things? I kind of got into this in my discussion of video game history, but they're the small little aspects of anything that make a world, story, you name it, feel a little bit more complete. They're nothing major or groundbreaking or earth shattering, but it's just little tiny extra details that are 100% not necessary but give the viewer, reader, or whatever it may be, that little bit of extra satisfaction or joy when they notice it or see it for the first time. It can be anything from seeing, let's go with Gravity Falls, seeing any of the callbacks to previous episodes or the foreshadowing for the future episodes, i.e., the grapple hook. Granted, that one's a little bit more blatant and does become plot relevant, but that's kind of how that show rolls. Same with One Piece. You have a million different little aspects in One Piece. One instance would be Lola being the daughter of Big Mom. Now, that one isn't as much of a little thing. Like, it is a little thing in context of One Piece, but it's these interweaving plot threads, or not even plot threads, like nuggets that are strewn throughout the entirety of the stories. And you can find them in all sorts of media, uh, movies, etc. And these little things are perfect for creating a world that feels more lived in and fleshed out. And even if they are tiny, little, inconsequential things, they eventually add up to create a very cohesive world inside of your story that most people, I would say, love to see. Like, sure, you have some people who go overboard and they're like, well, you need to have this amount of context in order to fully appreciate this story, but I wouldn't give them any attention because if they're saying you have to have every little thing that to actually appreciate the story, or if you are required to have 6 novels of like pre-reading material, then that's a little much. MCU, for instance, you don't necessarily need to know all the context and backstory for all those individual characters. It's nice, and you definitely enjoy it when you do have full context, but it is nowhere near the like required reading or viewing to watch every single little movie, every single singer, every single like minute detail. They are little details and they are wonderful to have in your story, but it is not required reading. Now, there is such a thing as going too far, and that kind of leads into the required reading material. For instance, um, you can have like this little tiny insignificant plot detail that was like left there or like called back to, and it could be completely not necessary. Like your entire plot thread hangs in the balance of this screwdriver, for instance, and this screwdriver, which was just shown being like the end all be all, like that might be a little much. It's more supposed to embellish or like be a small little nod, nudge, a little, hey, that's cute, or hey, that's really cool. That's what these little details are supposed to be. And it's goes both ways. You can have no little details or a complete disregard for your little details, and it will actively work against you. So, what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I would argue that a lot of the things introduced or shown in them is little details in the wrong direction. And I'm not saying it's specifically one movie, that is a kind of trend throughout all of the movies with each other specifically. Not even looking at the original trilogy or prequel stuff. I mean, within themselves, they add their little details, little lines, little quips. All of them actively work against the movie prior or the movie after. And that can like really destroy your world or any semblance of care or knowledge about the world that you are trying to engross your audience in. You can get that in, let's go with Game of Thrones. You can have little details like the coffee cup. Yeah, the Starbucks coffee cup, which can completely ruin certain immersion. And once you have stuff like that, it can completely destroy people's enjoyment or the intentional enjoyment that they're supposed to have. So they're supposed to be fully invested, engrossed in whatever the story or the visuals or anything like that. But if they are constantly trying to find either the plot hole, more like the Star Wars example, or the coffee cup, Game of Thrones example, then they're no longer interested in the story and looking for these little like nuggets. They're looking for these these negative Nancy nuggets, I guess is a way to put it. Like these little details that were not supposed to be there or are contradictory to the rest of the world. Now, that's not saying it's the same as fan service, because there is also fan service, which is not the same thing as like a little callback or little detail. So, going back with the Star Wars example, specifically episode 7, there's a lot of callbacks in that one. The Millennium Falcon would be one of the big ones. Uh, I get that it's somewhat plot relevant, kind of to an extent. It gets Han into the story, but that is very much nostalgia bait. Or you got the chess scene, or like space chess, or whatever the heck it's called, the hologram thing that Chewie threatens to pull C-3PO's arms off of, or R2D2's. Um, you have that coming back. That's a little detail, which is good, but like shoving all this stuff in the audience's face is what I would describe as fan service. Let's look at One Piece Stampede, for instance. They shove literally every single character that they can into that movie. You got Buggy the Clown, check. Pretty sure he's in that movie. Everyone's in that movie. You got Ace, check. Sabo, check. Hancock, check. Law, check. The rest of the freaking great, the worst generation, check. You got Gold D. Roger Treasure, check. You got Smoker, check. You got Crocodile, check. Like, you can just go down the list of everyone that's in that movie and just check it off. Like, this person's there, this person's there, this person's there, this person's there. And that's definitely, like, overt fan service that I would argue detriments the story being told. You want your little details, your finer things to be augments. You want them to bolster, like, really carve out your world, like, shape it and chisel it to what you need it to be. You don't want it to be like, hey, do you like lightsabers? Here's lightsabers. Hey, do you like the Millennium Falcon? Bam, Millennium Falcon. Little details. Leave it in the background. People might not notice. Most people won't notice. But those who do will be like, wow, that is awesome. Amazing attention to detail. Then they'll tell their friends. They'll be like, oh, you like this? Did you see in this scene where there was the little tiny egg? Well, that's the same egg that's in this one, but instead you see it as like a dragon or something in the background of the wand shop. Like those little things. Those are the things that'll add up, and they can only be uh, beneficial for your story if you just keep it little. Like, don't direct a lot of attention to your little details. Just let it be. Let it flow. Because if you start to put high emphasis on the little details, like you start having the camera pan to it, or you go into excruciating detail on whatever it is that you're describing, then it primes the audience to be like, that's important, and you'll get an unresolved Chekhov's gun. i.e., Star Wars. And you don't want to have that. You just want to have it be a little detail, like a small, possibly baby Chekhov's gun. Not a big major Chekhov's gun that's building up anticipation or hope because you're like, well, that was spent a bunch of time on. That means that's going to be important for it to later on be worthless or not even relevant to the greater narrative being told. This one was a little rambly, but let me know what you guys think. What are your favorite little tiny details done in a story? For me, mine would probably be in Avatar: The Last Airbender. You got it's not really. It's like a more of a joke and a gag, but it's when Aang is in Avatar Day. Aang's in the jail, and he can easily get out of the bindings that he's in. But they don't press on it at all. It's just a little joke, little gag, and it's small, and it's just like, well, of course, that doesn't look like it would fit at all. Love that little detail. But let me know what your guys' are. My name's been Sir Lord, and let's talk about it. Peace.